see you guys in the dark.
I moved to East Los Angeles the summer after high school. My parents bought the house from my aunt and uncle who had just moved out. We already had family in that area, so it felt familiar. The neighborhood was nice and quiet. The plan for me was to live with my parents and save money while I figured out what I wanted next. I was getting ready to start community college and apply to a medical assistant program. Back then, everyone had an opinion about East LA. People loved to describe it as dangerous, even though most of them had never been there. I grew up visiting my cousins in that same area, and it was never as dramatic as people made it sound. These places are not scary to me. They are just neighborhoods where people live. I met Michael at my cousin's house party that summer. He had tattoos and looked edgy. When he asked me out, I said yes. I was flattered and curious what he would be like. He told me he knew a place with the best guava nectar in town, and that we could go to a drive-in movie afterward. I actually laughed. I like guava nectar, but I had never heard anyone hype it up like that. But like I said, I was curious and I agreed. He parked at the drive in first. He said we could leave the car there, walk to the restaurant, and come back for the movie. We even asked the employees if that was okay. They said yes, as long as we paid a small fee, which he did. Something about the plan felt strange. The restaurant was about a 20-minute walk away, and the movie started at 9 p.m. It was close to 8. I asked him if it was smart to walk by ourselves so late. He smiled and said he thought I was not afraid of neighborhoods like this since I had spent so much time in East LA. He said it like a challenge. I remembered mentioning that earlier, and he used my own words to keep me from saying no, so I went along with it. Very few people were on the street, and it was dark. As we got closer to the restaurant, he stopped a few times to show me videos on his phone. They were silly clips that he thought were funny. I was uneasy about the walk. It felt like Michael wanted it to last longer than it should have. Something was off. Looking back, I think Michael was stalling. Then a car pulled up beside us. A masked man got out and walked toward us. For a second, I thought it might be a prank, like for a YouTube video. Then I heard his voice and he said, "I need your phone and wallet." I remember thinking he sounded young, maybe high school age. He also sounded nervous and out of breath. I can't prove this, but I could tell this was not something he had done before. That was the only time I'd ever been mugged, and I don't know what other muggers sound like, but I just know that guy had never done it before. I think he was hesitating. At one point, I even remember the driver yelled, "Hurry up, man," he yelled back. "I am hurrying, bro. She is right here." He kept looking at Michael. Michael looked back. I could not see their faces, but something in that moment told me they knew each other. He took my wallet and phone, then ran back to the car, and they drove away. Michael stood still. He did not help, but to be fair, I don't know what he could have done. You never know what someone with a gun might do if you make the wrong move. I was in shock, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I told Michael we should go to the police. He kept insisting we should still get guava nectar so I could calm down. I had just been robbed and he was offering me juice. I had no phone and no way to call anyone, and somehow we were still walking to get guava nectar. We got guava nectar and then walked back. When we finally got to the car, I told him again that I wanted to go to the police. This time, I said that if he refused, I would ask someone else in the parking lot to call. He finally said, okay. At the station, we gave our statements, and it got even stranger. I said the car was gray because I knew what I saw. Michael said it was white. I said there had been a driver who yelled, "Hurry up, man." Michael said there was no driver, that it was the same person who got back into the driver's seat of the car and drove himself off. He kept adding little changes. The officers were polite, but I could feel their patience thinning. When they realized we were giving them two different stories, one of them sighed. She said she could not really investigate if two people who were both there could not agree on what happened. I knew right then they were not going to investigate this any further. Michael drove me home. When my parents found out what had happened, they were furious. My mom told me never to talk to Michael again. She did not need to repeat herself. Thankfully, I did not lose much. My wallet was easy to replace, and I needed a new phone anyway. I have lived in East LA ever since that summer. 8 years later, I have never had another bad experience here. The more I think about that night, the more I am convinced that Michael planned it. I can still remember how he stalled to give them more time to come and mug me. I can still remember how calm he stayed through all of it. I can still remember how he tried to give the police completely different information from what had really happened. No way that was all an accident. Since then, I've seen Michael a few times at different things. He always wants to make small talk and invite me to things. I keep my guard up and don't agree to anything. I lived by myself after my sophomore year of college. In my third year, I lived off campus in an apartment complex that was gated and you needed a key to enter. Most of the residents were students. A few families lived there too. Brian was a kid who lived with his family there. I saw him around when I go to do laundry, and he liked talking to me. He was in fifth grade that year. He would talk to me and we would chat while I did my laundry. He'd tell me about school. It was nice. It kind of made me think back on when I was in fifth grade. He used to ask me what was going on for me. I usually said I was studying. One day, he asked me for my email address. He said he started writing stories and he wanted to send them to me. It felt harmless. It felt wholesome. I gave him my email address. He started sending me these little horror stories. There were abandoned houses, killer clowns, and stuff like that. While I was writing this, I just remembered that this was around the time we had a clown problem, and there were reports of clown attacks. I respected that he had a hobby. I didn't always respond to his emails, but I always mentioned something to him when I'd see him. Then he invited me to his elementary school graduation. I was in the middle of finals. I also just didn't want to give up a whole Friday morning, so instead I sent him a Hallmark card congratulating him. I thought that would be sweet enough. The next time I saw him, he did not seem happy. He said something like how it would only have been an hour and he had seen me spend longer with my friends. I didn't really know what to say to that because he kind of had a point. I think this really crossed a line when he asked me to get dinner with him. He said, "Just me and you." I said, "I don't think so." But he kept pushing, saying things like, "I just want to get to know you better." Even crazier, he was doing this while his mom was there. His mom could hear all this. I thought she would intervene. She did not. She giggled. When your 11-year-old son is pressuring a college student to go on a date with him after she has already said no, that is a great moment for a parent to step in and help enforce boundaries. I wasn't in that apartment for very long after this. I had one summer session that ended in August, and then I moved to a different place for the next year. I kept my distance. I did not want another invitation to anything. I gave that kid one-word answers. I avoided eye contact. I also blocked his email address. After I moved out, I didn't hear from Brian for a few months. Then around October, I started getting anonymous letters sent to my new address. I opened the first envelope, and the note said, "It is so easy to follow you. Can you hear the footsteps behind you?" I felt nauseous. I am uncomfortable even remembering that moment now. Then I got a second letter that said, "I know what you did. It is funny how you think it is over." I had read enough of that kid's stories to recognize his writing when I'd see it. This was the way the characters in his stories might speak. I knew instantly that he was the one sending me these letters. I felt ridiculous calling the police, but I did. Imagine calling the police and telling them that an 11-year-old might be sending you anonymous threatening letters. The police told me there was nothing they could do because no laws had been broken. They could not trace the letters. They also said these letters were more common than some people realized and that there was no concrete evidence to believe they were from that kid. They also told me that sometimes these kinds of letters come from senders that the recipient had never even met before. I guess the police were right. There was no way to prove it, but I know for a fact that kid sent me those letters. There was never a third letter. I never heard from him again. I think he moved on to something else. Maybe he found other people to spend his time thinking about, hopefully people his own age. I wish the cops had taken it more seriously, but I understand why they didn't. It is hard to investigate a situation that does not have any evidence. I am an alcoholic, and I have been sober for 9 years. That is, without a doubt, my proudest accomplishment. I started getting help during my sophomore year of high school. Looking back, I am so grateful for the timing. If I had hit rock bottom later, things would only have gotten worse. My parents actually transferred me to a different school so I could start fresh and meet new people. By the time I turned 18, a few months before graduation, I had already been sober for over 2 years. That was around the time I started aging out of most teen recovery programs. A lot of the counselors I worked with only focused on youth cases, so I had to start finding adult support groups. I grew up in Los Angeles, but not the touristy part. My neighborhood had liquor stores every few blocks and corner shops with thick plexiglass windows. Alcoholism was really common and normalized. So once the teen programs ended for me, I started going to early morning AA meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They were held in a small church near my school. I did not have first period on those days, so it worked out perfectly. After the meetings, I would usually stay for a couple extra minutes to write in my journal or just sit in quiet. One morning, this guy stayed after the meeting and asked me what I was writing. I told him I was journaling. He said he liked the idea and wanted to try it himself. After that, he started sitting next to me at every meeting. We would talk a bit afterward. He seemed normal. He was about my age. He knew I was about to graduate and asked if I planned to keep coming to that group during the summer. I told him I was not sure yet. I had just gotten a job across town and was looking into meetings closer to where I would be working. I could tell he did not love that answer. Sometimes you can just see disappointment on people's face. I used to talk a lot in those meetings. I did not go just to sit in silence. I brought energy into that room. I like to think I helped people feel a little better. I think he felt that too. And I think that is why he did not want me to leave. People have told me I talk too much, so maybe I'm just flattering myself and everyone else wanted me to be quiet, but I like to think I was making a difference. He asked again when I would be switching to a different group. I said I did not know yet. I told him I planned to keep coming through the end of the school year. I do not remember if I ever told him the name of my school, but I always wore royal blue and gold. He knew I went to school nearby, just around the corner from the church. It would not have been hard to figure it out. Then in the last 2 weeks of senior year, everything got wild. We had senior ditch day, late night hangouts, sleepovers, goodbye parties, etc. I missed the AA meetings at the church, and then I switched AA groups altogether. At graduation, everything was great, but that guy showed up. It was so off. He did not know me like that. I had never invited him. We were not close. But there he was, smiling at me from the back like it was completely normal. He came over afterward and said he brought a gift. It was a box of chocolates and a note about how much he would miss me. He said I should drop by the meetings again sometime. I uncomfortably said something like, "Thank you." I never went back. That whole situation was too weird. I did not want to see him again. Then he showed up at my new job. I was working the cosmetics counter at a big department store. The cosmetics department actually had its own cash register. The first time he walked by, I noticed him. Then he came back the next day, and the day after that. He never spoke or asked for help. He just wandered around near my station, looking over at me like it was no big deal. He did not even try to be subtle. Eventually, I told one of my coworkers, the type of woman who does not play. She walked right up to him and asked what he thought he was doing. She called him out in front of everybody. She said she knew exactly why he was there and that it was creepy and toxic. A few shoppers turned around to see what was going on. His face turned red and he walked away without saying anything. We told our manager afterward. The manager was glad we spoke up, but reminded us to let her know right away next time. There was no next time, though, since he never came back. I have not seen him since. Hopefully he got bored and moved on. I do not really care to find out what he wanted. I'm 20 and from West Virginia, town of about 4,000. I have been no contact from my maternal grandmother for over a decade and will not speak to her again for any reason. She still stalks me and tries to contact me. She is not mentally well and passed that down to my mom. My dad has his own share of issues, so there was some turmoil in my childhood, but I was always safe at home. Debbie didn't seem to agree and ended up taking my parents to court to gain grandparents' rights, which aren't a thing in West Virginia. She didn't, and we were granted a protective order due to her harassment. I'll talk more about this later, as I found out about it this past year. My mom has dealt with Debbie's control her whole life, and a lot of intense abuse from her dad. Her dad has left boot marks on her ribs. He would have me call him Tom and pretend he was my husband. Debbie was a klepto and very bipolar and psychotic. I do not use these terms lightly. Her first move was at the Memorial Day parade that ran through town, from the school down to the Memorial Cemetery. We were crossing the bridge on Main Street, my dad driving his truck in the parade in front of my group, and I heard her yelling for me from the sidewalk. She was pushing people out of the way and making her way towards me, and I was doing my best to act normal and ignore her. My dad noticed and put me in the truck after calling the cops, but I don't remember what happened after that. It was terrifying and embarrassing. Somehow, she outdid herself the second time and showed up to my school. We had already given the school pictures of her full name and aliases, everything we could to prevent her from getting access to me. They let her into the school because when they called up to the classroom, I refused to leave and started having a panic attack. I had the best teacher in the world, shout out Ms. Farley, and she put us into a lockdown right then and there and called my mom. At this point, I believe we were granted a full restraining order. My sister was born a few years later when I was 9, a flaming ginger in contrast to my dish waste to brown parents and myself. Debbie told everyone in town she belonged to the mailman, that my mom was on cocaine before getting pregnant with her. The list goes on. My mom has an autoimmune condition that has caused her to go through radiation, steroids, essentially hell, and when she got pregnant with my sister in the middle of treatments on birth control, she went into remission for years. As soon as she was born, we left the state, and she has stalked us for years. She has made hundreds of Facebook accounts, tried to reach me through every person she could think of. She's had hundreds of emails. When I visited my hometown for the first time since I was 9, I went to my old house and knocked on my neighbor's door. After some catching up, we were back to small town drama, and he told me how she used to shine a flashlight through our windows at night and would bounce a basketball on his porch in the middle of the night. He said she peed on his porch too. I, 21F, live with my grandparents in a large city on a busy road. I was just in bed when I heard the doorbell ring, and I was about to answer it, but my grandpa got to the door before me. I am now so glad that he did. I couldn't see the front door from the hallway, but when he opened it, I heard a woman say, "Hi, my name is Taylor. I think I know you." I didn't recognize that name, and my grandpa didn't either, because he told her that he definitely didn't know her. He asked how he could help her, and I heard him open the door wider and then her quick footsteps as she ran away. After she left, I came out to ask my grandpa what happened. He told me about the interaction with a puzzled look, and I immediately recognized it as suspicious. We have a Ring doorbell, so we pulled up the video it had taken. It showed a young woman covered in tattoos approaching our yard. As she walks up, she whistles loudly to someone off camera. I watch as my grandpa opens the door, and she says that she thinks she knows him. Now, my grandpa is a retired police officer, and tonight he happens to be wearing his t-shirt with the name of our city's police department. When he opens the door wider, she must notice his shirt because her eyes widen and she runs away. I watch as the video shows her holding up her arms, crossed in an X while she runs away. And a few seconds later, a man crawls out from behind my car parked outside and follows her. Then, the woman can be heard whistling again as they walk down the block. My grandpa called the non-emergency police line to report suspicious activity, and 2 officers arrived 15 minutes later to hear our statements and watch the video. They seemed to agree that these were probably 2 addicts working together, casing out the neighborhood to see which houses they could break into. Since there was no proof of a crime committed, the officers gave us an email to send the video to and left. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I, a 5'3", 100-pound, 21-year-old young woman, had been the one to answer the door, instead of my grandpa, a 6'2", ex-military retired police officer.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.